So now we're hopping into bullish versus bullshit. I have to say that real slow, or else I'll mess it up. But I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on Spy. More towards the end of the year. Like, what do we think Spy is going to do? I know I have my own opinion, but Shark, do you have any opinion on what we see Spy doing by the end of the year here?
Sure. It's a very obviously it's a really interesting market overall, and especially from a macro perspective. What's going on right now? Obviously, we had the pandemic, which was a very unique situation. A lot of people, as we were mentioning before, seasonality wise, October, September can be a bit of a weaker month, and we could very well see a 5%. Maybe I don't know if we'll get a 10% correction, but we could see that, and it wouldn't necessarily even be a bad thing. A nice thing for the RSI and all that kind of those indicators to kind of cool off and reset a bit. But as we all know, as well as far as seasonality is concerned, the Christmas rally, stocks usually tend to run up at the end of the year. So I think we're going to go higher. Now, we do have some other things to consider with the Federal Reserve and inflation. That's been a big talk. Obviously, we know Michael Burry is very adamant about hyperinflation and things like that coming into the market. Those macro perspectives can take a longer time to reveal themselves, in the market. But we also have the tapering issue with the Federal Reserve, tapering down on assets. So that is another concern that has a lot of people, spooked, so to speak. So I do think we push higher, but I say that very, cautiously. I'm cautiously bullish, at the
Yeah.
moment because we have just so many unknown variables. Obviously, still we have this stuff going on in Afghanistan, unfortunately right now as well. So that's another geopolitical thing that can come into the mix. I don't know how much it will. We're obviously monitoring that closely, and I hope everybody is safe. Our soldiers and stuff like that. Um, but so there are a couple of concerns, but just going by the chart, there's nothing to say that the trend isn't, northeast at the time, and
Yeah.
that we're going to push higher. So how that influences small caps, the IWM might be different. IWM is definitely a little bit more vulnerable to stuff with inflation, because of their growth stocks, and that's more forward based, on earnings and stuff like that. So if we get more inflation worries, I think growth stocks would be the first to be hit. But at the same time, a rising or sinking ship or tide, excuse me, will sink or put afloat all ships. So if the IWM is weak, if tech is weak because of inflation concerns, that's going to drag down everything. So cautiously bullish for new highs, um, but um, but there's just a lot on the table to consider. Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, um, the chart is kind of funky for SPY. Like it makes sense to have a pullback, like Shark was saying, 5 to 10%. If more, I'd be surprised. Like I feel like the chart is screaming slight pullback, but I don't think this chart is screaming we need a dip as in a knife on the daily or weekly for it to make another move. But I think a pullback is good. Like I think a pullback would ensure IWM continuing the way we need it to go. And I think a SPY pullback would kind of recharge those growth stocks that we need. And the growth stocks push the penny stocks, which a lot of people don't understand. Growth stocks are the kind of um, driving factor that penny stocks in that same sector need, because there's a lot of sectors that can move and a lot of sectors that can move by themselves, But the driving part of that sector is the large caps that we see moving there. So, like, say for automobiles, electric vehicles, you'll see a lot of things like Ford and a lot of things that are electric vehicles like Tesla move before you see anything like Neo Fisker or Zev move, because those are secondary kind of levels rather than Tesla, Ford, anything automobile, electric vehicle. Neo will be one of the leaders along with Tesla. Um, just like Spy will be a leader alongside IWM or QQQ. So I think Spy will move upwards. So generally speaking, I think Spy will move IWM and QQQ upwards. So if you're in the small cap, you're in the large cap realm, I think we see some positive movement. Spy, I'm gonna say bullish overall. Bullish is the way I want to go on this. I don't think it's bullshit at all. I think Spy is gonna keep moving. There will be a pullback at some point. No one can predict the pullback. No one can predict the correction that we're gonna see. We need a correction. It's gonna happen, but don't bet on it. Don't be the person who says Spy correction is gonna happen this week. You're going to lose money if you put money on the puts on that. Be the person who just has a slight hedge waiting, but also is betting long most of the time. Because I think SPY moves upwards. I think IWM moves upwards. I think QQQ moves upwards. I think XBI move upwards. Yeah, that's just what I think. I think the market moves upwards. So be ready for that. Expect that, and kind of just anticipate that into your swings. That's what I have to say on that.
Yeah, and I,
Yeah,
I would also say that, right now it's really kind of a day trader's market. You don't want to, at when SPY and the markets are at all-time highs, you don't want to be putting on a lot of option swings, especially, small caps again can be their kind of own world, onto themselves. But as far as options and swing trading, I'm really kind of advising not to put on too many new positions right now because, yes, we might be at a top. Yes, we might not be, but the risk to reward isn't that favorable. So even if a stock is beaten down, I would still caution a little bit about having too much in the swing portfolio. It's probably still best to manage your risk and err on the side of caution. Specifically at this time until
yeah,
we see a reset, and then you can go shopping. So I wouldn't be picking too many swings at the moment, personally. But
yeah. I I've touched on this before regarding SPY, and it's kind of crazy when you look at the chart. So I'm going back to May 19th. We have a dip, and then from May 19th to June 20th, we have an uptrend, and then June 20th we have a dip. From June 20th to July 19th, and we have an uptrend. Then we get another dip from July 20th to August 19th. We have an uptrend and then a dip. So I said this before. You see, it's almost a month to the day where we have a dip, a pretty big pullback, not a big pullback, but a decent sized pullback, and then we start an uptrend. This last little pullback was August 19th. So what does that say? September 19th, September 20th, we're going to get a little bit of a
right,
pullback.
yeah,
It's crazy that it's worked out that way the last 4 months. I
yeah,
think,
that those patterns like that are definitely, I think, worthwhile of keeping note and keeping a journal of how the market is moving like that. Having that awareness of those kind of macro trends like that, and not
yeah,
even when we talk about the opening morning flush, sells off in the morning and then comes up for later in the day. That's a microcosm of the macrocosm that you're talking about, and also when everyone seems to get really bearish, like you said on the 19th when SPY made a huge dip, every time it does that, then 3 or 4 days later, it ends up making new
Bounces
highs
back.
again
Yep.
every time. Now, again, we could say this a little bit might be some manipulation from the Federal Reserve or something like that. However, I remember I did the same play around the 19th when it was selling off a lot. I got a bunch of SPY calls, and 4 days later I sold them for, I think it was 170 something percent. So far, buy the dip strategy overall has been working. But when you are doing that, obviously you want to manage your risk, have a tight stop loss, and make sure if the buy the dip isn't working, that you have an acceptable zone to get out. Just in